Hello everyone, Tina here. I hope your day's going wonderful. I'm so glad you're joining me. Today is the 14th and that means it's release day. Simon Says Stamp has their brand new card kit for August 2023. It's called Retro Wishes. I have it behind my bag here and we're going to take a look at everything that's in the kit and then we're going to create some projects. The kits are available today on the 14th, but they start shipping on the 17th. So you'll have some inspiration when you get your kit. We're all ready to go. Let's take a look at the kit. I'm going to go over it really quick. Before I do, I want to mention that my neighbors have their gardeners out and I actually need to put the gardener dates on the calendar. I think they're gardening twice a week now. So if you hear lawnmowers or blowers, I apologize. I waited as long as I could, but they're usually out there for like 45 minutes. Okay, so let's take a look at the kit. You get a whole bunch of goodies in the kit. We're going to start off with a stencil. This is a smaller stencil set. Let me measure it for you. It measures 3 by 3 and this is called pinwheel. You get 2 pinwheels that are great on their own, but if you layer them together it creates a nice pattern for a card. You get a stencil set. You get some pattern papers from Pink Fresh Studio and I love them. Look how pretty. I'll go through them really quick. These are double-sided sheets. They're 6 by 6. There's even some cut-aparts in here. Did you guys see that? So lots of fun patterns in our 6 by 6 pattern paper pack. We get some Pause It sticky notes. I showed you these before when they were released a few months back, but these are nice because you could do masking with them, or you could just jot down little notes or put them in lunch boxes or stick them anywhere. So you get a nice little pack of Pause It sticky notes. You get an embossing folder. This one's called Margot Tile. I love the tiles on here because they're smaller, and when you have a smaller embossed print, for me, you can emboss with any color and it'll look fabulous in the background. So you get another embossing folder, which is fabulous. You get your 6 by 8 stamp set, and there are 5, including the little blocks, images in here. They're layering. So, and they're all indexed too, which is really nice. You have set A, goes here, in here, and you have set B. They're all indexed. Set C, set D, and then you get 2 blocks here, and then you get the little, some little extra pieces. Lots of sentiments for plenty of cards, and this is called Retro Wishes, the same name as our card kit. And if I'm talking louder, it's because it seems like they're right next door. Okay, we have 3 sheets of 8.5 by 11 cardstock. One of them is a specialty, but this is 110-pound Nina cardstock. It's great for card bases. This is actually the same weight of cardstock that I use for my card bases, so I appreciate that they put this in the kit. This is great too for Copic coloring, Nina is. So 110 pound, and you get a sheet of the champagne cardstock. This is a matte, champagne matte cardstock. This is 90 pound and the back side is white, but it die cuts beautifully. If you like a real soft gold, elegant gold, this is beautiful. And then my camera's not focusing. I thought I fixed it. And then you also get an 8.5 by 11 sheet of Nina 80-pound cardstock. If you like craft cardstock, I think this will be your favorite because it is a nice weight. And it's a nice color. Some craft cardstocks are real dark or have a lot of fibers in there, but this is like perfect. So you get that. We get a new tool, and I'm excited to try this. This is called the sponge applicator. And I've never used one of these, and so the first thing that I wanted to do was, let me get my swatches out. I swatched my inks here. First thing that I wanted to do was go like this, but sponge applicator is a pouncer. So you definitely want to pounce. Don't go side to side because it's not going to work very well. You can see that the sponge is tucked in there really well, but it's meant to pounce. So I'm excited to try that. And then since we have our swatches out, we have 2 inks, 2 full-size ink pads. We have Simon Says Stamp's Positively Saturated Tropic ink pad. This is what this looks like. It's more of a green than a teal, but it's beautiful. And I think stamping wise it's more green, but if you were to ink blend with it, I think it'd become more of a teal color. More teal than green. But we get a full-size ink pad of that, and I love that because I'm starting to build up my stash. I have the small ink cubes of the Positively Saturated, but it's an investment to get the full size. So I was excited that we get a full size in here. And then this here is the Simon Says Stamp white ink pad. This is a premium pigment ink pad. So I don't know if you know this, but you can emboss with this. Anything you want to use your white embossing powder with, I suggest using it with the pigment ink versus Versamark, because you can see where you're actually stamping, which makes it really nice. And it's a nice thick ink, and it coats just beautifully. It does pull back in color. You can see the wet versus the dry, so the color does pull back, but it's definitely nice for dark cardstock. Love that. Okay, let's jump in and create some cards. I'm going to go ahead and pick out some pattern papers, and we will get started. Oh, and I did get bubble gum, which is my favorite sucker, although I'm trying to go sugar-free, so I've been using stevia, so this one is just gonna have to sit on my desk for a little while until I can have a treat. For my first card, I thought we would use the stencil set, and I had put some pixie spray behind here already, and then I have a 3" by 3" square panel. We're gonna layer this on our square panel here. And I'm just going to use some tape to tape this down so it doesn't go anywhere. I chose some colors inspired by the pattern paper here. So I wanted a pink and orange, a blue, and a green. I kind of go with color themes. And so I have some Positively Saturated mini ink cubes. I have Perfection, Bubblegum, and Cantaloupe. And then Simon Says Stamp doesn't have any, well, I'm sure they do have the larger ink pads, but I don't have any blue, so I have my Memento Summer Sky. I wanted the blue for to do my stenciling. And then we're going to start with our bubblegum ink, and then I'm just going to be using my blending brush. I'm going to pick up some ink, and I'm going to go over our stencil here. Now that we have our bubblegum, I do want a gradient on the bottom half. So that's where my cantaloupe will come in. And I'm just going to add a light shading of cantaloupe over the bottom. So stencil 1 is done, and I think that looks really pretty. I'm going to keep my tape. I'll grab part 2 of my stencil, and I tape that down. For this part of the stencil, this is where my blue ink will come in. And I'll do the same thing with my Perfection ink, but I'm going to go over the top portion this time. Now we get to see the results. We'll just remove our tape. And I just love the colors that brings. I'm going to go ahead and take my stencil, my first layer of my stencil, and I'm just going to do the middle here. I'm going to go over it with my green ink. Maybe pink. We'll go over this with our pink. And then I'll take our second stencil layer. I'll just line it up right over the top. For the second layer, I think we'll use Blue. We'll go pink and blue. I think that looks really pretty. I'm going to use my scissors and we're going to trim away this middle piece. And then I'll take a piece of white cardstock. Using my tape runner, I'm going to mat this piece on some white cardstock. And then I'll just trim away the excess here. Now I'm going to take my crocodile. I'm going to punch a hole in the middle here. And then I have a white brad. I'm going to add that to the center here. I'm going to add a couple foam squares behind this piece. And then I'll replace this with the center here for a little bit of dimension. I'm going to take my embossing folder. I will line this up on the inside. And then I'll run this through my die cut machine. I'm going to take this panel and I'm going to adhere this directly on my card base. We'll place this in the center. And I'm going to flip this around. I'm going to put some foam tape behind here. And then we'll pop this up and put it in the middle of our card. Now I'm going to stamp my sentiment. I chose Thinking of You in our stamp set. And I'm just going to stamp this with my black ink. And then I'm going to fussy cut out my scent. Actually, do we want to block it off? Yeah. I'm going to fussy cut around my sentiment. And then I'm going to go ahead and take some Moonshine Sequins. And we're going to add some sparkle here. And that will finish off my first card. For my second card, I'm going to take this pattern paper and I'm going to trim it down. I'm going to take 1 1/4 inches off the left, 1 1/4 inches off of the right. One and a half. I'll flip it around. I'll take 1 1/2 inches off of the other side. And then 3/4 inches off the top. And then we'll take 3/4 inches off the bottom. I think that's going to work out great. And I'm going to save these because I want to use them on another card. Now that we have this panel done, I used my paper trimmer and I trimmed some really thin strips of my champagne matte cardstock, and I'm going to go ahead and go over each one of Following the lines on the colors here, I'm going to add some glue. And then I'm going to take some of my thin strips and we're going to replace those lines with a little bit of shine. Okay, so we have a fun pattern here. Now I'm not going to trim these away. What I'm going to do is take this panel and then I'm going to flip it around using my tape runner. I'm going to add some adhesive behind it. And then I have a panel that measures 3 3/4 inches wide by 5 inches tall. I'm going to take this panel and I'm going to adhere it to the center of this. And what I'm going to do is just flip this around. I'm going to add some adhesive. And you could very well, oops. And you can very well trim away these, but I'm just going to flip them around. Kind of looks like a color wheel almost. I think we're going to turn this into a happy birthday card, and I thought we would use our craft cardstock. And I'm going to treat my paper with my anti-static powder tool. And we're going to use birthday wishes. And I mentioned during my unboxing that our white ink works beautifully for embossing. So that's what we're going to do. I will stamp this. And then I'm going to go over this with some white embossing powder. And I'll go ahead and melt this. I'm going to trim this just a little bit more. And then I'm going to turn it into a tag. And I will trim away the corners here. And then just using, so I created a tag. Now I'm going to thread some white twine through there, and I did use a brad at the very end because I like some texture on my cards. And then I'm going to put some tape behind here. And I will tack this down right in the middle of all 4 colors. And then I will tie a bow here. And lastly, we're going to bring back some moonshine sequins, and we're going to add some sparkle. And that will finish card number 2. For my next card, I mentioned we're going to be using these strips. I'm going to, let's see, I went 4 1.5 by 1.5 inch strips. So I'm going to trim, oh, that's a pretty one though. Maybe we'll do it this way. Okay. So we'll trim a 1.5 inch off of here. And then I'll flip it around and I'll do the same thing. I'll trim 1.5 inches off of here. I'm going to bring in my stamping positioner. I'm going to place this in the corner here. And in our stamp set, we have D1 and D2. We're going to use those for this card. I'm going to put D1 right in the center. And then using our ink, I'm going to be using our white pigment ink. I'm going to ink up our image. Then I'm going to go ahead and stamp this a couple times. Maybe once more. And then I'm going to repeat the process with the other colors that we have. We'll just place this. Next, I'll go ahead and take D2. I'm going to put these back in my stamping positioner carefully. And then I'll line up our next layer. And instead of using our white pigment ink for our middle layer, I'm going to use some coordinating colors. So I'll use bubble gum. I ended up switching out my bubble gum for carnation ink because this was bubble gum was a little bit light. So I stamped this. Next, I'll take our green. Okay. Now I have some extra cardstock. I'm going to flip these around. Actually, we're going to add some adhesive, and I'm going to mat carefully. I'm going to mat these on some white cardstock. So each of my little tiles are matted on white cardstock, and then I went ahead and took another panel, and 4 inches by 5 1/4 is the size of this, and I embossed it with our embossing folder. And I'm going to actually use the debossed side. Both sides of this embossing folder are really pretty. And I'm going to go ahead and add my panel here. Just making sure it's centered. And then I put foam tape behind each of our tiles. And I'm going to line 2 on the top. I'll leave a gap. And then I'll put 2 on the bottom. I fussy cut around my sending so much thanks. We're going to place this in the middle. And I think I'm going to lower these. I'm going to adjust these just a little bit. Wonderful. And in the center of each one of these tiles, I'm going to put a gem. I'm going to put a large gem here for a little bit of sparkle. Actually, I'll go medium. And that finishes that card. Such fun tiles. For my next card, I have this pattern paper. Now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to trim at the archway, leaving a little bit of a white border. And then I'm going to take my panel and I'm going to place it about 3/4 of an inch from the bottom here. And then I'm going to bring in my paper trimmer and I'm going to trim this at 4 inches. And then I'll flip it around, and then I'm going to trim this at 5 1/4. I'm going to take this panel, I'm going to put some adhesive behind here, and we'll place this on our card base. I'm going to take this panel and I'll pop this up with some foam tape. Once this is adhered, I have these two leftover pieces of pattern paper from our previous card, and in our stamp set we have the small corner. I'm going to take that and I'm going to treat these with my anti-static powder, and then using our white pigment ink, I'm going to take our corner and I will stamp these. I could actually do it in the corner. I'm going to stamp this in the corner, leaving a little bit of a border. And I want these a little bit wider, so what I'm going to do is bring in my white embossing powder, and we're going to emboss those corners. Okay, so we have the 4 corners. And then what I'll do next is take my scissors and I'm going to trim away Okay, I'm going to use let's see. I'm going to use my tape runner and add some adhesive behind here, and we're going to stack these together. Stamp Hey Friend. And then I'll remove my release paper here. Just a few sequins. And then that will finish that card. Something a little bit different. Well, here's a look at all the cards that I made today with the Simon Says Stamp card kit for August 2023. It's called Retro Wishes. And I hope this gives you some ideas on how to use the kit. And I thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.